Hey there, CJ Math students. Welcome to Notes 5.5 two-step equations. So here are our steps for two-step equations. Undo addition or subtraction with inverse operations. More specifically, we're going to undo the addition or subtraction of the constants. Remember, constants are a number all by themselves. Then we're going to do undo multiplication or division with inverse operations. And we're going to do that of the coefficients. Remember, coefficients are the numbers attached to variables, right? Then we're going to isolate the variable like we've always been doing. So we get x equals y equals, then we're going to check our solution by plugging back in, right? So I've done a couple of these for us. Look at some multiplication examples here. I want you to notice something specifically with why I've highlighted. You'll notice, and this is why you have highlighters in your baskets, I'm highlighting every single time I am doing a step, right? So this is your first step where you're moving the constant. This is your second step where you're dividing by the coefficient in this case, right? I also want you to notice right here that we had addition, but in this case I decided to add -2 to both sides. Make a note here. Adding -2 plus a -2 is the same as -2. So you can either decide to say, hey, if I see +2, I can either do -2 to both sides, or I can do plus a -2, right? Because in both cases, those equal 0. You'll notice here, I had -8. I decided to KCC it and make it plus -8. No matter what, I still end up doing +8 to both sides, right? So I don't change that at all, okay? So you'll notice also we plug our numbers back in for solutions. So we work with the constant, then we work with the coefficient, plug our number back in, check examples. Division's no different, right? We see division here. So again, the first step is always to move the constant. In this case, I had -2, so I added 2 to both sides, or I had KCC'd, so plus -2, so I added +2 to both sides. You'll notice x over 3 just gets dropped down, 1 plus 2 is 3, and then it just becomes a one-step equation, right, where I see division, so I multiply on both sides. Same thing here. Here I had +2. Again, I want you to make a note. I decided to do plus -2. Plus -2 is the same as -2, right? And notice how I'm doing the SSAK and DSSN. That just helps me make sure I know what integer rules to use. You have a calculator, so it should definitely be out next to you to help you solve these problems. And again, remember, you're just checking in by whatever the variable was, plugging your solution in instead. So let's try some of these on the back. All right, first thing you're going to want to do is draw your scales of justice to pick out which side your variable's on. Okay, so the side that the variable's on in this case is the left side. So because the variable's on the left side, I'm going to go ahead and find the constant. That's 10. That's the number all by itself. And I can say -10 to both sides. Once I do that, highlight it, because that's your first step of a two-step equation, right? You could also say plus -10 if you want to. Either one works. So those cancel off because that's 0. And you drop down your 3k. So we've got 3k is equal to 22 minus 10, which is 12. Okay, now here comes the second step, right? So we have 3k, 3 times some number equals 12. I see multiplication, so I end up dividing, right? Highlight that because that is your second step of a two-step equation. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so it cancels out, and you're left with k is equal to 12 divided by 3 is 4. So in checking this, you have 10 plus 3, not k, but parentheses 4 is equal to 22. So order of operations, you do the multiplication first. That's 12 plus 10 is equal to 22. And then 10 plus 12 is 22 is equal to 22. So you'll notice the check is a little bit longer on these two-step equations than they were in one-step equation. All right, I'm going to allow you to do number 2. You'll notice that the variable is on your right-hand side, so we'll be working with this -5 first. Number 3, we're going to go ahead and draw our scales of justice. Variables on the left-hand side. I see -8. That's the constant on the left-hand side, so that's what I'm going to move to both sides. highlight that first step of the two-step equation. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0, so that gets removed. R over 2 gets dropped down, R over 2. And it's okay if you got a big space between R over 2 and the equal sign, because we're doing this just like Tetris. Everything stays exactly where it is, right? So 16 plus 8 is 24. Now we've got R over 2 is equal to 24. I see division, therefore I'm going to multiply both sides by my denominator, which is 2. Right? So 2 times R is 2R divided by 2. That is 1, so those cancel off. And you're going to want to highlight this step because that is your second step of a two-step equation. So R gets dropped down, and then 24 times 2 is 48. Okay? So we'll check by plugging in. So becomes 48 over 2 instead of R over 2. So 48 was our solution. Minus 8 is equal to 16. 48 over 2, that's comes first. That's 24 minus 8 equals 16, and 24 minus 8 is 16 equals 16. All right. We will talk about some of the rest of these together as a class.